All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Laura. You guys are all my friends. So, we're going to just be here to talk today about parenting, which is such a fun topic to talk about, right? um, I, by no means, am feel like I'm a stellar parent, so we'll work through this, we'll walk through this together today. Let's begin by praying, and then we'll get started. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all here this morning, here to Mid-Pointe, to talk about parenting, what it's like to raise our kids that you've entrusted us with, Lord. Help us to focus today on the blessing of that, to remember that we can trust you in everything, and to lay our concerns and our thoughts and our struggles with you all the time. Lord, be with our conversation. Give me wisdom in the things that I bring, and be with us today. In your name we pray. Amen. So, like I said, I'm Laura. I've been a member here at Emmanuel for quite some time, maybe like 12 years or so. I've been working in various parts of the building here. My husband, Brian, and I have 3 boys. Aiden, our oldest, is a senior in college, so he's at the University of Iowa. It was a really hard thing because Brian and I are U of I, University of Illinois alums. So having a kid go to another Big Ten school was very difficult in the beginning, but now we like the Hawkeyes and we say go Hawks when we see people. So we feel like we're converts a little bit. So Aiden's a senior at the University of Iowa. Evan is a junior. Nope, he's a sophomore at the University of Louisville. And then we also learned that you don't say Louisville, you say Louisville, like you have marbles in your mouth. So there's lots of things we're learning there. So he's a sophomore there. Both are studying business. And then Kieran, our youngest, is a senior in high school and filling out those college applications and all of those things. All 3 of our boys went to school here at Emmanuel through 8th grade and then went to Prairie Ridge High School. Just giving you a little bit of background on us. So Brian and I, we don't, like I said, we don't feel like we've got this parenting thing down yet. I don't know if any of you do. If you do, wow, congratulations. Then I'm expecting you to talk a lot today. But I'm filling in for Missy Berg. Missy's a high school counselor, and she's very humble about all of her credentials behind her. She continuously studies and continuously learns and is just wonderful in counseling kids, but also parents. She's got such a great perspective and just a great, just her knowing of and reading of all these books. She truly enjoys it. So she's planning to be here for the rest of this series. So I hope you can come back and just glean some of her wisdom. So she's phenomenal. That being said, she was here last week, and she gave us homework to do. And so last week, we talked about, well, she says anyone remember, but I'll just go ahead and mention it. She said to commit to one way that you can be a disciple to your kids, and how can you incorporate a healthier Sabbath with your family? Those were some of the big topics that we talked about last week in here. Is anyone willing to share? Did you think about it a little bit when you went home? Did something stick out to you from the conversation last week?
I like the whole not having friends over and making it more of a family day kind of thing.
Yeah, that Sabbath, right? That healthier Sabbath, making it more of a family day. Anyone else? Did that stick with you?
Yeah, we walked away last week and just really focused, was intentional with just our family, which is not typical in the Sunday, but we definitely made sure that we stayed home, that technology was kind of off, we played a little bit more, we did some board games together, so we just made it purposeful. And then we did it a little bit last night, because I know today we have a kid's birthday party that we're going to, so like last night we did Monopoly, and like we just tried to find those moments where it was just us and nothing, no other distractions.
Love that. That's great. Great encouragement. I think I'm a little bit, Missy shared last week, for our family, Brian and I are blessed to have all of our parents and pretty much all of our siblings living close by too. So there's my parents, and then there's Brian's mom and his stepdad, and then there's Brian's dad and his stepmom, and then there's his two sisters and their families, and then my sister and her family. And so we feel like we always need to see everybody. And so I look back on all the years of when my boys were younger, it was let's run over to their house and spend time with them. So that's a regret that I have. So I encourage you to make your family time equally important. So that's okay, and that's important. Anyone else about the discipling to your kids? We talked about that last week. We talked about realizing that this place is amazing, right? Some of our kids go to school here. We provide Sunday school on Sunday mornings, worship, fellowship with all of us doing this. Wonderful. But we, as the parents, are the primary disciples of our children. They're with us most of the time. And so what we're doing at home is important. And it can be prayer time at meals, and it can be prayer time at bedtime, but it's also in those day-to-day conversations. As a teacher, we say those teachable moments, right? And that can be them bringing something up. How can we pepper in our faith and a faith talk through what that conversation is? So that can be peppered in, like I said, all throughout the day. Some of my best times with my boys, because they're boys and they don't like to talk to mom all the time, were conversations in the car. And I called it windshield talk. So you didn't have to look at me and I didn't have to look at you. But we also had a rule of no phones in the car. And they had to talk. And we had some of our best conversation then. So we're going to kind of get into that a little bit more today. Anyone else on homework for last week?
I think the easiest discipling is just reading whatever the scriptures with the kids at bedtime. We found that to be the easiest because it's so hard. Jim Burns talked about in the video last week. It's hard to find that time to make something happen, and so we always found. And you may read it night after night for however long, and that's all you do, and you pray and whatever. But quite often, that's where the best conversations came from, and that's where the discipling happened.
That's great. And how many of you feel like your kids want to talk at bedtime, right? That's maybe meeting them where they're at. Even though we're tired, that's meeting their needs. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the meat of what we're going to be talking about this week, which is communication and discipline. So let's first talk about communication. Think right now, what do you think is necessary for effective communication? What are some things that you think are necessary for effective communication? Doesn't have to be you with your child. It can be just in general.
No distractions.
No distractions. Okay.
Listening.
What's that?
Listening.
Listening.
You have to have the right message.
The right message. Okay.
Being non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental.
Intentionality.
Intentional. You guys are good. This is great. Good. I jotted down a few things too. Some are the same. Listening, for sure. I kind of even said sometimes that eye contact, or like, can I see that you're listening to me? You know, maybe that clear message, what you're trying to get across is clear. And a relationship, and that's kind of what we're going to go today with a little bit of this communication talk. A relationship together, how we can build that, and what kind of home we're providing. We're also going to talk about discipline. So on the same note of communication, now what do you think is necessary for effective discipline? What is necessary for effective discipline?
Boundaries.
Boundaries. There's no wrong answer here.
Consistency.
Consistency.
Clear expectations before discipline.
Yeah, okay. your expectations before. What about parents being on the same page?
Yeah.
Yeah. So today, we're going to talk, we've got another video, this is part of our video series. Jim Burns is the speaker, the professional here, who's going to do our teaching. And we're going to break this week's video up into 3 chunks. So we're going to watch this first part on communication and just really creating a home. And he's going to go into a little acronym here, and then we will talk about that after we're done. So we can go ahead and begin.
Let's go to another lesson. This has no Hebrew in it. It's the lesson of awe. A period W period E. What that means is, as a family, we learn to communicate with affection, warmth, and encouragement. I actually have a Post-it note on my desk. If you came to my office, you'd see it. It's a yellowed Post-it note, and it literally says A period W period E period. And it reminds me that on each level, I need to bring affection, warmth, and encouragement. Now, obviously, it's appropriate affection. So I present affection to my wife, to my children, to my grandchildren, very different than I present to somebody in the office. But you can still show affection to people. Warmth is a tone. Encouragement is obviously praising and affirming them. So let's take a look at affection. How is the affection level at your home? So UCLA did a study recently that said 8 to 10 meaningful touches a day for a family or for a person to thrive. But I'm convinced that there are a lot of people who are starved for affection, appropriate affection. Now, I'm not talking about sexual attraction or even sexual affection. I'm talking about appropriate affection. Hey, your kids. So coming here to the studio to film, I drove by a school, a high school, and I'm convinced there are a lot of kids there who are sexually active, not because they wanted sex, but because they crave affection, and if they got that affection from home, they may not look for false affection someplace else. There was this girl, she was 17 years old, she came into my office with her mom and her dad, and the story was the mom and the dad caught her in the act of, having a physical relationship with her boyfriend during school. And she was feeling great shame, and the parents were really mad, and I show up in my office, and here they are. And the dad was really upset, and he called her a bad name, and this wasn't going nowhere. She's just looking down. And finally, I said, would you, to the couple, mom and the dad, would you mind leaving for a moment? I'd like to talk to your daughter. Well, I have daughters. I didn't see this because her eyes were down, but I'm sure her eyes rolled like, oh, great, now this old man's going to come and talk to me. And so I kind of did this, just kind of waited. I was looking for her to look up. And then I said, wow, that was tough. And I love teenagers because she goes, well, it's true. She said, I used to be close to my dad. I didn't even ask her what her relationship was like with her dad, but her dad had done most of the talking. She said, he's the one who would put me on his knee and do this little horsey ride, and he would read books with me, and he would wrestle with me, and he's the one who taught me how to play tennis. She was an all-California State tennis player. And then she said, but Jim, I didn't even know she knew my name. Jim, one of the coolest things was when my dad would come home from work, I would come running up to him, and I'd sometimes try to hide from him. I'd come over a bush, I'd go over the couch, whatever it was, and he'd just lift me up and he'd say, how's my little princess? And when she said that word, she began to, her eyes welled up with tears, and she kind of cried a little bit. Because she said, I guess I'm not his princess anymore. She was kind of pretending like, he'd put her down. I pretty much had heard enough, but we sort of bonded and kept hanging out for a bit. And I said, can I bring your parents back in? And I said to her dad, I said, how's your relationship with your daughter? And he said, it's not as good now. I'm pretty frustrated with her, as you can tell. It used to be great. I'm the one who taught her how to play tennis. I'm the one who would put her on the knee and do this little horsey ride, which we laughed at that they both came up with that. I would read to her, I would wrestle with her, but Jim, the coolest thing was when she was younger, I would come home from work and I'd be looking for her. And she would come out of a bush, or she would come behind the car, and she'd come running into my arms, and I'd lift her up and I'd say, how's my little princess? And when he said that, his lip began to quiver, just like his daughter's, and then his eyes welled up with tears. And then he said, well, she sort of copped an attitude, and here we are today. And I looked at that man as I would look at you, and I looked at his wife, and I said, my friends, if you don't shower her with appropriate hugs. There are hundreds of boys, and I looked at her because she's so beautiful. I went, no, there are thousands of boys who would offer inappropriate affection and more. My point being this, that a family that has lots of affection, so when your kids are littler, that works all the time. But as they get older, they need to continue to have affection. The next one is warmth, A-W. So I want to say as parents, you set the atmosphere. Too many parents allow the kids to set the atmosphere. No, you set the tone. That takes some discipline. It's your job as a parent. It's not your kids. So you set warmth by leading. You can be angry at your kids 24/7, 365. But what we learn is that it's setting warmth that makes a difference. Nagging doesn't work. Negativity doesn't work. So my mom, she was the all-time party time lady. And she was very, very positive, and she set warmth. Even though she was married to my dad, who was an alcoholic and didn't know how to do good relationships, but my mom she could deal with it in such a different way. I can remember when I would be like 16 and my friends would come over, knock on the door, is Jim here? No, he's playing basketball down at the high school gym. Well, can we come in and hang out with you? I mean, that was her. But what I find as a parent, and actually just as a human being, is that I want to be a person of warmth. And even when my mom passed away and we had the funeral for her, you know what it was about? It was about her being a warm, loving, inviting, beautiful person who showered people with acceptance and warmth. And that's what you want to be able to do in your home as well. It's actually a communication form. The third one is encouragement. So we have to kind of compare between encouragement and what we call shame-based parenting. Some of you were raised on shame-based parenting. How'd that work for you? Probably not very well. It probably brought resentment, and some of the negativity surely didn't work. But kids who are around encouragement. Now, I'm not talking about false cheerleading that, just is making up stuff. But I'm saying in a home where there's encouragement and praise and affirmation in the midst of creating some boundaries with discipline, that's the kind of home you want to have. It was Mark Twain who said, I can live 2 months on one good compliment. Okay. I have a sign in my office that says every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally positive about them. And I've lived with that. And I remember my daughter Heidi, when she was in grad school, happened to need my office for something, and she was going to print or something. She looked at that, maybe for the first time, although she had been in my office for hundreds of times, and she said, Dad, I love that quote. She goes, Dad, you're that person for me. And at that moment, and I disciplined her and we had boundaries, but at that moment, what she didn't see was my eyes kind of well up with tears because I wanted that so badly. Jesus, you know what he did? He nicknamed a guy named Simon Peter. So the name of the apostle Peter was actually Simon, and Jesus nicknamed him Peter. There weren't anybody named Peter in those days. Peter in Greek means the rock or the stone, see? So in other words, Jesus nicknamed him, the way I look at it, Rocky. But who became the rock of the Jerusalem church? Hey, it was Peter. Why? Because Jesus believed in him and Jesus encouraged him. Even in the midst of some really poor choices that Peter made, Peter became who Jesus believed him to be, and you can do the same thing. So the lesson of awe is a great lesson. Now, again, we can talk a lot about conflict and other types of things, and we must someday, but this is a great foundation for how you build your home, both with your kids.
There it is. Yeah, that's all right. So, first, any thoughts on that? Kind of dig deep into it here. So, the lesson of awe, he tells us, is also under that umbrella of communication. So, think about that. I think about it in terms of like my kids who are older. I have some who, I have like 2 kids who are pretty obedient to what Brian and I say, and I have one who pushes back. And if I don't respond with this, it could be a rough situation in our house. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about affection. Having affection for your children, he says, being generous with hugs, kisses, playtime, just physical closeness. Maybe physical displays of love, appropriate affection. And maybe when they're a little older, it's that warm, welcoming, secure feeling that they have, that affection. Any thoughts on that for you guys? Do you see that that is purposeful for those of you who have younger kids versus older?
I feel like when kids are apologizing or when something goes wrong, sometimes affection means more to them than words. So when you give them a hug after they do something wrong, that means a lot more to them than just I forgive you. It's showing them I forgive you, you're safe, you're forgiven, good.
And sometimes they need that hug.
Yes,
To
which is
know that-
probably why they were being naughty in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. Could you guys all hear that? Yeah, needing that hug, that affection. Any others? Maybe that bedtime time together?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of affection right now, and a lot of times we're putting them to bed and things like that, but we're just throughout the day. But in the story, it seemed like, maybe things went astray, like maybe she started getting an attitude, the daughter, and then that warmth wasn't there, and it didn't continue. So, my kids are younger, but I'm thinking, okay, maybe it evolves, but, making sure that kind of you keep that going as they get older.
Yeah. Especially with that father-daughter relationship or mother-son.
So, I have a question, and maybe we'll just pose it to the group.
Absolutely.
So, what happens is if my son does something wrong, and I say, oh, well, we did something wrong, like you need to go think about it, go sit on your bed, just calm down, whatever is this thing that he needs to go do. He'll be so upset that he'll just say, can't you just make me feel better? But I'm like, okay, but then if I just give you a hug, I'm kind of, I'm like, you need to emotional regulate on your own. Like, go take some space. Like, so I guess my question is just like,
Where's that balance?
yeah, how do I then separate and say, well, first you need to have the discipline, and then I'll give you love. Like, just, he like wants it at the same time. I'm like, well, can you just make me feel better immediately? And I'm like, no.
Any thoughts on that? What do you guys think?
This was us last night, quite literally. It's like, Sarah was speaking, I said, I love you, I just can't hug you right now, I will hug you when you're calm and I'm calm, and I just like walked off. She was very unhappy with me, but I feel like just, I know words isn't always what they want in that moment, but I'm like, I also am not ready for you to be screaming in my ear while I hug you. And finding that boundary there of like, telling you, I'm gonna go take a break, you're gonna take a break when we're both done with this. Then there's that moment of coming back together, and like for Simon, he doesn't always want to be hugged, but he'll be like, can you just sit in my room? I'm like, I can do that. So it's not always about like that, like physical, I don't know, he just doesn't like to be like,
Right.
snuggled as much. Maybe
Right.
he's too cool for school, I don't know, but
Well, every
he
child
just
is
wants to be,
different.
he wants to know we're there.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's okay for us to be people too.
Yeah.
And say like, I love you, I need a minute. I told you, take this break now, so.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
I feel like, so we have one that does not want to be touched when he's upset, and we have one that does need that hug. And we will give him the hug, but it doesn't take away whatever consequence he still has to serve. Like, okay, I'll give you that hug so that you feel safe,
Yeah.
and you still have to serve out your discipline.
Did you hear that? I think that's great advice. Like, we're still going to, I like the serve out, dole out the punishment. But I'll give you the hug that you need. But I also think, in just kind of doing a little bit of background reading for this, we have to put in mind, we are humans too, and we have feelings, right? And we've maybe worked a whole day, or we're tired. And so sometimes we react out of our reaction, right, of how we're feeling. So it's okay to have feelings too. We're going to get into that a little bit more. And I think as our discussion goes on, I'm hoping that your question can be answered a little bit more, Amy. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to say? Let's go into warmth. So that's affection. sharing affection. What about this warmth topic that he brought up, which is creating a home that is kind and calm and not a negative, critical war zone? The opposite of that. He says in his book, many of us have slow burning anger, frustration, annoyance, and irritations. True. And how we react has the power to destroy. So providing a proper climate of warmth. Thoughts on that? How easy is that? Not easy. Right. We're busy. Jill, you look like your mouth is open.
I'm trying, it's like hard to balance between having like a fun and energetic home versus a calm home, and where do they meet?
Yeah.
And what works for everyone. But I think it kind of ebbs and flows throughout the day.
Yeah.
Like, come 6 o'clock in the evening, we're early to bed friends. So that's when we calm down a little and chill out. But the rest of the day, it's just very energetic.
Very energetic. Right.
Not calm.
With kids with different feelings and emotions going on
Yeah.
all day, how is it very easy to create a calm, warm home?
I think I have mom guilt around this one too, because I'm a working parent and I feel like moms are responsible for creating some of that. Sometimes maybe I can't always do that at the level that my mom did as a stay-at-home parent.
Right.
Or if anybody else deals with that.
And the fact that you might be tired at the end of the day, too. So, as I was studying for all this, and my son's sitting on the couch, and I'm like, okay, I need to be calm and create this warm home, but I also need to talk to him, and we need a relationship, and we should be touching while we're doing it. And I'm like, but I'm really just tired because I come from school, and like, so it's not that easy. So it's just take it where you want today, but.
That resonates with me a lot because I work from home majority of the time. So they get off the bus and they're excited to talk about their day, but I'm still got an hour and a half left of work. So then they come in, we do the unpacking the backpacks, we do all the stuff, hear all the stories, and then all I'm thinking about is like counting down the time, like I have to get back to my computer, I have to finish this. And so we give them then some time where they can cool down, have their moment, or sometimes like, I'm just gonna unplug from my desk. And I can bring my laptop downstairs and sit next to them as they're watching something on TV. So I'm in the room, I'm present, if that's possible. But I feel that a lot with being able to, they come home and they're so excited and I'm like, it is only 3:45.
Yeah.
I still have till 5 to get stuff done. So
Yeah.
that's hard.
It's hard. It is hard. Day by day.
I don't think that warmth has to be like all rainbows and butterflies. I feel like warmth is, okay, someone's upset in the household and you're able to like share that emotion and say, yeah, I get that. I get why you would feel that way. I feel like that's sharing warmth too, not we just have to pretend like everything's fine and it's good.
And he will say that as we get into the next video. He'll say just that. Like, I'll say to my kids, if I were you, I would feel that same way too. But it's all just kind of the warmth really is just in our reaction sometimes, just in how they're behaving. How are we responding with warmth? So. And then encouragement. Encouragement. He says kids will respond better to a compliment or affirmation than a negative, angry put down. Probably, right? A quote from his book says, if you pour water on flowers, they will flourish. If you don't, they will die. Pretty simple. But think about that. Your words have power. I like that. So what are some intentional ways that you can improve communication with your kids? I'm going to tell you something from the book, a little to-do list that he has, and that is to say I love you more, to show physical affection, to listen and use eye contact, and to pray with them daily are some of his encouraging words from the book. How to just improve that communication in your home. And when I say the book, you too can get this book. Jim Burns, we haven't talked about it much. He's the author of this book. He's written a lot of parenting books. If you're a reader, I do recommend it. It's quite good. Talking about just parenting in general and keeping our focus. I've actually read his book that's called Raising Adult Children. It's Raising Adult Children, know when to keep your mouth shut and the doormat out. So it was really good. I read that this summer just on my own, happened to stumble upon it. So he's quite good. He also is part of Homeward. Homeward is, you can see that will be, you'll see it on the video there. That's like the publisher of his things, but he has a ton of podcasts under that Homeward title. So you can listen to him if you're a podcast person. It's a great one for a walk in the morning. He's got guests on his show. He too talks a lot. And it's all Christian focused. So another good resource for parenting is Focus on the Family. Focus on the Family has articles, website, podcasts, marriage stuff, young kids, old kids. That's a great one too, with a good Christian focus. As I get older, more and more, this is just Laura Gilleland's nuggets of wisdom. Take it for what it's worth. But as I notice more and more, the more I focus on God's word and surround myself with Christian friends and good Christian, maybe even like music and TV and all that, the more it comes out of me. And so if I'm going to come over here and surround myself maybe without that, with angry people, angry things in my life, then maybe the more angry I'm going to be. I try to tell that to my own kids. Who you're surrounding yourself with matters. So, congrats on being here today. First step. Joel?
Real quick, I was curious too if anyone has kids like this. We're in the pre-tween or pre-teen, pre-tween. I've heard pre-tween. But anyway, our daughter, the kids are 11, twins, and Hannah is already now the instant talking back, defensive, like you can't even start explaining anything. Oh, I'm sorry that I'm not perfect. I'm sorry that this and that. And for me as a guy, I have to control myself to not go 180 as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious, so that whole shame-based parenting, but also encouragement is always a challenge because it feels so unnatural for me to encourage you when you're always, feels like you're acting naughty.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, and also the second to that is if anybody struggles with how you were parented. Because I was parented with, I'll never forget my dad asking me one time when I was 13, 14, aren't you tired of me nagging you all the time? Aren't you tired of me disciplining you? And I finally sat there and said, yeah, I am. I'm tired of fighting you all the time. So I just gave in. And when you don't have kids that are necessarily people pleasers like you as much, we struggle with that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really struggling with.
Yeah.
What worked for me doesn't seem to work for my kids.
Yeah, I agree. It is, and it's difficult, right? It's a challenge every day, right? Let's hold on that note. I like it because let's watch the next video, which is about discipline. So let's talk about that.
Spouse as well. Another lesson, the lesson with discipline and grace. So how do you create a grace-filled home? Well, the bottom line is, you're not trying to raise obedient children. Your bottom line is, you're trying to raise responsible adults. So to do that, it takes discipline, but it takes loads of grace as well. Let me give you 5 points to thinking about discipline and how you can build that relationship. Number one is, and a lot of people say this, rules without relationship equal rebellion, okay? So you need to have a relationship with your kids. Maybe you didn't have as good of a relationship with a parent, but you can change that. So you have a relationship. Relationship doesn't mean that you have to be rigid, because rigid parenting equals rebellion, always. You don't have to be a lenient parent because you want to be liked so much, because a lenient parent, well, that equals wandering or kind of being rudderless. So you've got to be somewhere in the middle, but your relationship matters. And if you're a dictator, well, that's not good. If you're a friend, well, that's not good either, okay? Be the parent. And what I want to say is healthy parents lead with authority. Authority doesn't mean yelling, screaming, and shouting. No, authority means you open up their spirit because you are the leader and they know who the leader is and they know where you're going because good leaders can point the way, okay? Another way of saying it is this: put more relational deposits into their life than relational withdrawals, okay? Also, choose your battles wisely, but win the battle, okay? You're the parent, so don't lose battles, okay? Win the battle, but choose them wisely. Is it really that big of a deal? See, the question I have to ask always is, does that really matter? So my dad and I battled over blue tennis shoes, okay? That was the battle, because back then it was white tennis shoes or black tennis shoes, and I wanted to wear blue tennis shoes. Did that really matter? I'm not sure that's worth it. There are some things that matter, but there's a lot of things that don't matter, so just don't battle everything. See, we had a therapist tell us one time, a good friend of ours actually, we were telling them about an issue we were having with one of our girls who's strong-willed. And this therapist said, don't argue with her. One thing, you'll get out-argued because she's really strong, and she is. But you can't be their best friend either, okay? They think you're too old anyway. So you don't win, like I said, with screaming, yelling, hitting. You win with authority. You win the battles with leadership. Now, here's what I would do. I would simply use a couple of phrases that I want to teach you. There's more phrases in my book called Confident Parenting, but here's a couple. I would say when you're in a conflict or you're trying to set some boundaries and you're dealing with discipline, I might say to my children, well, if I was your age, I might feel the same way. See, so now I'm not saying your feelings are wrong, but if I was your age, I might feel the same way. But then there's a great word. Some people divide it out and make it 3 words, but it's really 1 word. Are you ready for it? Nevertheless. So in other words, I identify by saying, I get how you feel, but nevertheless, and then I say what's going to happen. Another great phrase is life isn't fair. Because how many of you've all had kids if they're at a certain age who have gone, that's not fair. Well, life's not fair. And in teaching them that life's not fair, you're actually preparing them for responsible adulthood, okay? What's another phrase? Well, nagging doesn't work, okay? Nagging and negativity, no, doesn't work. Shame-based parenting, it just doesn't work, see? So if you're raised with shame-based parenting, like I said, it didn't work for you, but you know what? If you were raised with shame-based parenting, then you're probably going to go in that direction. Well, you probably rebelled from that eventually. So if you happen to be negative Nancy, negative Ned, I'm not throwing bullets at you. I'm just simply saying that if you constantly use nagging and if you constantly use negativity to discipline your kids and talk with your spouse that way, guess what they're doing? I'll tell you because I don't know you. They're running from you. So negativity and nagging just simply doesn't work. Flee from it, run from it, okay? And fourthly is don't be afraid to admit your mistakes. That's actually a form of discipline, and it's a form of setting boundaries, but to say, let's say you yelled at your kids and you were out of control, okay? I am so sorry. That's a great phrase, okay? And actually, I've said to Christy and Rebecca and Heidi at times, you know, that was more about me than about you, and I'm deeply sorry. So when you take the hit, that's not showing weakness, that's actually showing a strength. And then lastly, clearly express your expectations. You know, I've given most of my life to helping kids succeed. And when I talk to kids who are at risk, they oftentimes say, I don't know what my parents' expectations are. But if I talk to the parents, they go, of course they know what the expectations are. So a key to a good relationship and good discipline is to be clear, okay? I love this phrase. To be clear is to be kind. I don't know as parents if we're clear enough, okay? Generally speaking, kids want to obey. I really believe that. I don't think they're still going to color outside the lines at certain ages. They do want to obey. And sometimes they honestly don't know what you want, okay?
All right. Did you like that one? I did too. I like that he starts with, you're not trying to raise obedient children, you're trying to raise responsible adults. So think about that. It feels like so in the moment right now, right? With the arguing back and forth, or they're hot-tempered, or just misbehaving constantly, and you're just like, how do I see past this? Let's look at where our goal is. And my encouragement too is you are the parent. I love what he says. You are the parent, and so win the battle. Come up with clear expectations and win the battle. Thoughts that you guys have? on this. We're going to just put out his 5 bullet points. Thoughts on that? What are you guys thinking? Or what stuck out to you?
For me, choose your battles wisely, I think has always been something I've leaned into, especially when they're young, whether it was shoes or what they wanted to wear. Like Cameron today has pants that are way too small on him, but he's like, I want one more time with them. Okay, then I'm gonna let that go. Get one more time with these pants. They are definitely too small, but it's not worth to me, it wasn't worth the fight this morning. And it doesn't hurt anything in the process. So I think I read something, especially when they were younger, like, unless it's putting them at risk, right? Give them a little bit of this freedom to be able to make their own decisions, and is it really worth what it is in the end?
Right. Right. You've created a calmer environment because of the pants this morning. Right. Right. I love it.
Yeah, that's one that I gotta work on, choosing the battles. Like,
Choosing the balance.
yeah, for sure, because like, what I think or what we think is appropriate isn't necessarily a necessity requirement, and that's just
Yeah.
it's a struggle for me. Like,
Yeah.
Like it has this sliding net for baseball, and it is completely pointless. It looks like an oven mitt. You guys know if you have baseball kids, they cannot slide head first. And so there literally is no reason for him to wear it. And I just need to just let him wear it. Yes.
He bought it too.
I didn't even know
Because
there
you
was
saw the
such a thing.
professionals.
Yes,
Right?
yes, that's just one example, but yeah.
There's many.
Yes, there's many.
Yeah. Okay, good. Choosing your battles wisely.
I
Jill.
think the rules is always so interesting, because in my eyes, we don't have to have a rule for everything. Like, I would like my children to take some creative liberties and figure it out, and like it doesn't always go ABC. But just a couple weeks ago, I'm like, why do I have to have a rule for everything? Like they were asking me about, like, well, why can't I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And I'm just like, I'm so overwhelmed. Like, just Micah's 9. Like, I'm like, you're old enough, bud. You can make a good decision.
Yeah.
I'm like, Reagan, you can pick out a healthy snack. You know it's healthy food. Like, I don't need a rule for that.
Yeah. They're
You're
going to
hungry,
test
eat.
the boundaries. though.
Yes.
That is
But-
what they do.
But I need them
Far
to start
too
making
much.
some of their own boundaries too, or like realizing the boundaries on their own without asking.
Without asking.
I feel like we have some of the struggles with the expectations. We try our hardest to set some expectations ahead of time. Like, you know, after school, we're driving home and we're saying, okay, when we get home, I expect you to put your stuff away, you know, empty your backpack, you know, go get a snack, go to your room so I can finish work, you know, things like that. And then they walk in, they throw their stuff, they run away, they're fighting with each other, and all chaos breaks out.
And then we yell, and then we apologize, like, I'm sorry I yelled, and they're like, you shouldn't yell at me, I wasn't doing anything wrong.
Go swimming after school, yeah. All this is so normal, right? You guys know this situation. Well, these are all some really great reminders, right? So you've got that in your bulletin or your handout. Take that with you this week. All right, we're going to finish the video, and then we'll talk more. So let's go to the last part.
Now, keeping in mind with discipline and grace, it's important to understand that we discipline and bring grace into the different stages of parenting. But the stages are divided, and sometimes we just throw them all at once, and that's not a good way. So let's look at stage 1. Stage 1 is catering. So if you have a child from birth to 2, well, then basically you do everything for your child. Our daughter Heidi right now has a 6-week-old. She's doing everything. I look at Heidi's eyes. She's exhausted because the baby gets up in the middle of the night, it's not sleeping good, and she's catering. So if the baby is crying, you pick up the baby, or you feed the baby, or you change the baby, and you know that's kind of your life. And you know it does get better. She will get some sleep eventually, 18 years from now. But it's catering, so you're catering to your children. That's what you do. You don't really discipline them at this age. What you're doing is just taking care of their needs. Okay. Stage 2 is controlling, and that's from age 2 to say 10. Nothing perfect in terms of the times here. And controlling, if you're a control freak, you love this stage. Okay, you can micromanage in the best sense with your kids' life, and you keep them safe and keep them, on task. And so we do a lot of controlling from 2 to 10, but even as they get older, say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you begin giving them a little bit more freedom, because the bottom line is always this: you want them to become responsible adults. If you continue to control, they're never going to become responsible adults. And that's what your goal is. That's crazy to think about, because right now you're in the midst, at that age, you're in the midst of just busy, 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 but you want them to become responsible adults one time. Not going to happen if you're, only controlling. So stage 3 becomes important. That's coaching. I'm going to say this is from about 10 to 15 years old. So you let your child start making more decisions. Now, again, if you're a coach, say you're a baseball coach or a tennis coach or whatever, you're still in the lead. You're still helping them make decisions. You're still pointing them in the direction. You're giving them a timeout, but you're coaching them because you're coaching them to become a responsible adult. Okay, it's not an easy season if you like to control, because you actually have to give up that. So my daughter and I were talking this last week, even though she's only 6 weeks into it, she was talking about weaning the baby eventually. And I told her that it's not easy for the weenie or the weaner. Can't believe I just said that. But that's the case as you're weaning your kids from control to coaching. But they've got to go in that direction. That's 10 to 15. You're still in control. You're still in charge. You're just letting them make some of those decisions. Stage 4 is a tough one for some. It's consulting. So actually from 15 to actually even all the way up to young adulthood, by this time you should be allowing your kid to make most of his or her choices. And you're there for support and you're there for counsel. You're still the boss. They live in your home. You're still in charge, but you've got to become a consultant so that one day you can go to stage 5, which is caring. And your job, day-to-day parent, is done. Now remember, you're still the parent, but your day-to-day parenting job is done. And this is where you can show care and where you can encourage, where you can mentor, and hopefully see the fruit of your effort. Now, some of you may know I wrote a book called Doing Life with Your Adult Children. Keep your mouth shut and the welcome that out pretty much describes what the book's about. And the goal here is responsible adulthood, and that's in the caring stage. But it won't happen if you're enabling dependence still on your kids. So what some of the principles are, you're fired. Your role as a parent has to change. You still are the parent, but your role has to change. You've got to give them the passport to adulthood. How about unsolicited advice is usually taken as criticism? You're moving them from dependence to independence so that you can become the mentor, and goes on and on. But this is a different stage in life, and so you're back to caring, because what you really want to be now is the mentor. Okay, so let's go to another lesson. It's called Building Morals and Values in the Lives of Your Kids. It's actually your job to help instill morals and values into the lives of your kids. You've got help from church, you've got help from school, you've got help from other people, but that's your job. Now, there is another course where we deal with these issues on morals and values in much greater depth, but I definitely must bring this up for you in the Confident Parenting course as well, okay?
I think back to that. He was talking about those 5-letter C's: catering, controlling, coaching, consulting. And I remember being in that exact stage with my oldest son when we were between the controlling and coaching stage. And I thought I was still in the controlling stage. And it was here at Emmanuel when he was in 8th grade. And it was the musical time. And he was to try out for that musical, except he told me, I don't want to be in the musical. And I said, no, you're gonna be in the musical. And he said, no, I don't want to do it. Even though he had done it all the other years prior, I don't want to. And I said, I really, honestly, no, you're going to do it. And so we came here for tryouts, and we pulled up, walked in the main entrance, and I sat at one of the high top tables, and he walked down here in this room to Dana Robinson and whoever else was the, tryout judge, and he walked in and he said, I'm not trying out. And he walked out, and he came and told me. That's what I told them. I told you I'm not doing it. And I was like, do you remember that, Julie? I was like, so it was like slap in the face, but it was for real. And that's our Aiden. So Yeah, like they will put their foot down. So out of the controlling stage into the coaching stage for me. So and realizing he is his own person, and as are your children. So other thoughts on this whole. Let's go into it. As a role as a parent, how do you feel about those stages? Missy put up this quote, we're not just shaping a child, but also the adult that he or she will become. David?
So everything that the videos have talked about today, I definitely feel like we're always struggling to try to do every little thing that's mentioned, like you were saying, I gotta be sitting close, I gotta be talking, and it's like, it can feel so overwhelming for sure to try to do everything. But as far as with Lincoln at age 8, one of the few things where I feel like has been working with him is if I can give him a little bit of control in a situation. So instead of, hey, you have to take a shower tonight or do your homework, it's, you wanna take a shower in an hour, or do you wanna take a shower right before bedtime?
Mm-hmm.
And like, as soon as he has a little bit of say in the matter, it changes the whole interaction between us, so,
That's great advice.
yeah.
That's that love and logic. You know, give them the choice. Do you want to do it now or do you want to do it in an hour? We use that in the classroom all the time with preschoolers. It's not a choice whether you wash your hands. You can do it here or over there. So giving them choices, yeah, you're still calling the shots, right? I like that. Missy also talked about just skill development. Last week we talked about this a little bit too, the stages of parenting, that we do it for them, then we do it with them, then we watch and give feedback, and then create them to be independent. I'm still not there with my high schooler and cleaning his bedroom. I feel like we're still in the with stage. I'm choosing my battles, right? Just shut the door. And then these are those stages of parenting that we talked about.
The tagline on Missy's email that she has, so every time we email about Mid-Pointe and stuff, I read this regularly, and it's so powerful. And it's prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child. And probably we've heard that, but every time we're reminded, and that's really our goal as parents, you know, to make holy children become holy adults, responsible. So.
Yeah. And guys, the other thing is, I lean into this a lot. God has given you your children for a reason, and he knows that you can do this. And so keep your relationship close to him. Continue doing what you're doing by coming here and making this a priority. Learn yourself. And that will, like we said, surround yourself with good people, good, strong Christian friends. That helps support you in your walk as a parent as well. So it's not perfect. It's not easy. Every day is a challenge. But talk to your friends about it. Use your Christian counsel. So homework. Missy likes to give homework. So lessons of awe and the lessons of discipline and grace. What do you do well and what do you struggle with? She wants you to think about that this week. Kind of our topics today. What do you feel like you're doing pretty good at, and what do you think you could work on? And then think about what stage of parenting that you're in. In what ways are you doing well with that? In what ways are you struggling with that? And she'll just kind of start next week by chatting about those things. Some quote that he had in the book that I think is a little bit lighthearted to end with today is, raising children is kind of like raising a dog. He says it's 66% people training and 33% dog training. And so think about that. Really, a lot of that is us being trained in what we're doing, right? And there's no instruction manual that comes for parenting, right? So it's really us training and then us bringing our parenting to them. So let's end in prayer today. Heavenly Father, thank you for being with us this morning. Thank you for this time together. Lord, we keep you as our focus day to day. Lord, thank you for this community here at Emmanuel that supports our walk as parents. Help us to lean into that community, our friends, those that we're meeting along this way. Help us to use each other, to build each other up. Lord, also help us to turn to you in our struggles, to realize that you are there to support us. We know that you believe in us, so let us lean into that. Be with us this week and bring us back here healthy next week. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, thank you guys. Have a great week.